to all of you. So this is the analysis as well as the solution of the sample paper 1, CLAT 2023. And if you have taken the second sample paper second also, so you have gone through the analysis, and I hope you have done well in that. And sample paper 1 also was an easy one, or rather easier than the second paper. So as always, we'll quickly go through the passage and then come up with the questions, and how answering the questions would be easy here, because out of these 6 passages, at least 4 you will get all correct answers. You should get all correct answers. That remains, that is 2 passages remaining. In that you will get around 4, yeah, the maximum thing, 4 answers correct out of 5. That makes how much? 20, 28. So okay, fine. 28, 26, anything with 26 correct will be good. Will be good. 28, excellent. So let us read this first passage. If you have not gone through this, kindly quickly go about it. Follow quickly. So Bob is close to retirement. This was his condition. He's invested his savings in a very valuable old car which he has not been able to insure. So the point here is he has not been able to insure. The car is his pride and joy. Not only does Bob get pleasure from driving and caring for his car, also knows that its rising market value means that he will be able to sell it and live comfortably after retirement. This is what his thought process is. So one day when Bob is out for a drive, he parks the car near a railway siding, goes for a walk by the track. As he does so, he sees that a runaway train with no one aboard is rolling down the tracks. Looking further down the track, he sees the small figure of a child who appears to be absorbed in playing on the tracks. Who appears to be absorbed, no, not necessarily he is. He looked as though he was absorbed totally in his play and not aware of the, not aware is oblivious. So oblivious to the runaway train, the child is in great danger. Bob can't stop the train and the child is too far away to hear his warning shout, but Bob can throw a switch that will divert the train down the siding where his car is parked. Stop the train and the child is too far away to hear his warning shout, but Bob can throw a switch that will divert the train down the siding where his car is parked. If he does so, nobody will be killed. But the train will crash through the decaying, through the decaying at the end of the siding and destroy his car. Now, thinking of this joy in owning the car and the financial security it represents, Bob decides not to throw the switch. So he is not going to throw the switch. So Peter Unger developed this story to challenge us to think about how much we should sacrifice in order to save a child's life. The story has a factor crucial to thinking about real world poverty, uncertainty about the outcome of sacrifice. Bob cannot be certain that the child will die if he does nothing and saves his car. So he is not certain about the outcome of the sacrifice. At the last, perhaps at the last moment, the child will hear the train and leap to safety. In the same way, most of us can summon doubts about whether the money we give to a charity is really helping the people it's intended to help. This last line comes from Peter Unger, where he comes up with the story in the previous paragraph, and then he raises a question as to how much we should sacrifice rather, in order to save a child. Right? Now, people respond that Bob acted badly when he did not throw the switch and destroy his most cherished possessions, thereby sacrificing his hope of a financially secure retirement. We can't take a serious risk with a life merely to save a car, no matter how valuable the car may be. By implication, we should also believe that with the sample act of saving money for retirement, we are acting as badly as Bob. Now see, by implication means what is it required? When the people say, यार बच्चे की जान बचानी चाहिए थी, अच्छा इसको अपनी कार की पड़ी है, ऐसा बोलेंगे तो फिर. Now according to this, if Peter Unger says that with this, what is implied is that if you are saving for your future also and not using it now in the present. So what are you doing? You are as bad as Bob. For in saving money for retirement, we are effectively refusing to use that money to help save lives. This is a difficult implication to confront. How can it be wrong to save for a comfortable retirement? There is at the very least something puzzling here. Something puzzling here मतलब ये जो situation है इसमें कुछ तो गड़बड़ है. That is what the point is. Right? So, now let us see the question. It was an easy one. So, which of the following is Bob from Peter Unger's story most likely to agree with? So, first we see what is being asked. Supporting. So, it is more important to save a child's life than anything else. ऐसा होता तो वो खुद भी save कर लेता. Isn't it? So, A is incorrect. It is more important to protect one's own interests rather than those of others. Possible. This is what Bob thought. Therefore, he did not harm his car. Charity is more important than improving one's own lot, but charity is more important. He could have acted in a different manner then. So, the C is out. And one must look out for others' interests, especially children. So, no, this is also incorrect. So, we have B as the answer, which was easily arrived at. Clear? Coming to the second question. Which of the following provides an example most closely resembling Bob's decision resulting from uncertainty about the outcome of sacrifice that the author discusses in the passage? So, what is required here, what is needed to be kept in mind is this uncertainty about the outcome of sacrifice. पता नहीं जिसे हम हेल्प करते हैं उस तक हेल्प पहुंचेगी भी या नहीं. That is the uncertainty part. So, Gurmeet earns very little and spends his entire income on providing the needs of his family. So, he is very certain that he is spending and his family is going to benefit. So, this will not be the answer. Not an example. Roger earns very well and distributes a large amount of food amongst the needy every. So, he is distributing food, right? So, he is certain that the way he is distributing is reaching the person who is hungry. So, there is no uncertainty here. So, this will not be the answer. Ahmed earns very little but donates a significant portion of his salary to charity every month. He earns very little, donates a significant portion of his charity every month. And D says Ravi earns well but does not donate to charity because he is not sure whether charitable money reaches the poor. He is not sure. So, here comes the uncertainty. So, he doesn't even work. He doesn't even donate. So, he earns well but he does not donate to charity because he is not sure whether charitable money reaches the poor. So, we have D as an answer. Next. What according to the author is puzzling about how people react to Bob's actions and the implications of such a reaction? So, that one could be criticized for ensuring one's comfort in retirement. So, what do we need is puzzling. What was puzzling according to the author? And then the implications of such a reaction. So, how people react and then what are the implications of their reaction, right? So, there is an action, there is a reaction and then there is an implication of the reaction. So, there are three things. What do we need to find out is how people would react and then the implications of such a reaction. So, one could be criticized for ensuring one's comfort in retirement. Could be criticized, ये तो है. One could be criticized for ensuring one's comfort in retirement rather than donating one's money to help others. ये भी है. One could be criticized for not saving a child's life, it is saving, right? So, not saving a child's life, and that one could be criticized for protecting other people. But then this is not puzzling, no? Then we need a implication of the reaction. So C and D would not be there. This is not the answer, this is not the answer. What we have is either A or B. Now A says what? Puzzling is that whether we are ensuring our own comfort in retirement, that is okay. So I can mark A as the answer. But the other point is that we are comfortable, or we are ensuring our comfort in retirement and not donating money to help others. Right? So this is a more comprehensive answer than the B one, and therefore your answer, than the A one, and therefore your answer is B and not A. Right? Go on. Coming to the next question. Which of the following, if true, would most weaken the implication the author draws in the last paragraph of the passage from people's reactions to Bob's actions? Right? What is being drawn? And what we need is to weaken that implication. So let us read the last paragraph again. Here. People respond that Bob acted badly when he did not throw the switch and destroy his most cherished possession, thereby sacrificing his hope of a financially secure retirement. Now we can't take a serious risk with a life merely to save a car, no matter how valuable the car may be, by implication. Now this is the implication that he has drawn. We should also believe that with the simple act of saving money for retirement, we are acting as badly as Bob. That means if we are saving money for a retirement, it is not good. Why? Because we are not donating that money. We could have helped other people with that money, which we are keeping for our own comfortable retirement. Right? Now this is the implication. So if we go back to the options, we need something that is weakening this implication. So if I read the first one, people consider Bob's actions had bad since he should have saved his retirement money in a bank rather than spending it on a car. Now people consider, this is a bank. People consider Bob's actions good, since unauthorized persons should not fool around with railway track switches. Third says, people consider Bob's actions good, since in saving the car he also ensured a comfortable old age despite not helping other people. So they are considering his action good, not helping other people good. So then this will be like weakening, because they said that it is not good. And people consider Bob's actions bad since he should not have gone out for a walk. Now this is an irrelevant statement, sort of, no? Really weird reasoning that they give. Now if they consider him bad since he should have saved his retirement money in a bank rather than spending it in a car. So this is something that you can't change now. It was not according to the story. So let us leave this. So we leave A, we leave D. Now we are left with either B or C. So people consider Bob's actions good, since unauthorized persons should not fool around with railway track switches. So this is like a completely different part of the argument, you can say, right, or the implication. We need something that can be drawn, but which is weakening the people's reactions to Bob's actions. We need that, something that is according to their reaction. So this sentence, considering him good, becomes the opposite point, no? He is good because he saved the car, right, and he did not help the other people. So this becomes a weakening point. Hence C becomes your answer. Coming to the next question. Which of the following would provide a solution to what the author describes as the puzzling question of how can it be wrong to save for a comfortable retirement? So now, how can it be wrong? This is the question. So give a solution to it. So one should save for a comfortable retirement, but not at the cost of putting others in peril. Fine. So others should not be harmed, but you come for save for a comfortable retirement. Others should not be harmed. That is correct. So I'll mark A as a small tick. I'll mark here. Second says one should save for a comfortable retirement, but should donate all surplus money to help others. So first you save for yourself, and then you can donate it to others. You can do that, because that was what can be done, right? Because what is being asked, see, if Bob did it or not did it, that is not the question. The question asks a solution, to provide a solution. So both A and B can be the solutions. So we have C as the answer. So here all 5 questions should have been correct without consuming more time. Coming to the next question. So Ambedkar had opined that the reservations he was proposing should have a time frame. He had opined, right? To underline this, had opined, that means it was his opinion that it should have a time frame. कुछ समय तक reservations करें. He had envisaged that during this period, with the help of reservations, there would be a significant social as well as economic development in the lives of the underprivileged, who would not need such support once the development is achieved. So the basic point here was that what Ambedkar had said, that the reservation should be there but with only a limited time frame. Now in my alma mater, the Hyderabad Public School, there are seats earmarked for scheduled SCs and STs with rooms being provided to them in school hostel. A common complaint heard is that the school standard gets affected by these allotments, since these students fare poorly at studies. So that means they are not good at studies. Still they are given the seats because of the reservations. Instead of smiling at such students, a deeper analysis is perhaps required. I was born to educated parents. My father, highly regarded lawyer, was always buried neck deep in his law books. Similarly, my mother would have, or not any, it's just my mother, would have a book in her hand in her spare time. Thereby it was inculcated subconsciously in me that my future lay in doing well academically. That means he was seeing books around him in his childhood. So on the other hand, if the boy allotted a seat under reservation is the child of labourers, then he believes that studies are transient and that he will soon be toiling manually like his parents. So when such a boy is translocated into a highly academic zone, it is only natural that he feels lost. While he might go through the motions of classroom activities, homework would certainly not be a priority. That means he will not be inclined to study, because since childhood he has seen his parents working. So he thinks that even his lot is, or his fate will be that he is going to work. Now therefore, a responsible, socially oriented school or government should oversee that the true benefits of admitting him in the HPS accrue to him. The seed of academic interest should be implanted in his mind through counseling. Teachers should be given the responsibility to ensure that children are able to study by themselves. Special classes should be organized. Now you can see this whole paragraph consists of suggestion. What should be done, what should not be done. But then the purpose of the powers that be is not how the students are faring in their studies. Their purpose is creating vote banks for themselves by such allotments. Now this is the reason, the ulterior motive of why they are still coming up with reservations. Whereas in the very first sentence it is said that Ambedkar wanted it to be, or proposed it to be, within a time frame. So now another similar motive is through 3 acres of land to the scheduled caste in Telangana that is being promised by the present Telangana government. If at all such an allotment is implemented, then it is purely again to make these sections into vote banks. And over a period of time, if a person benefited by the scheme sells that land, there will be a loud murmur heard. Why should lands be allotted for these people if they are going to be sold? Ambedkar envisaged reservations, allocation of seats to the poor and schools, and allotment of lands for the development of the allottees, not to make vote banks. Coming to the question, which of the following is or are examples of how, according to the author, the purpose of the powers that be in providing benefits to certain sections of society is different from the manner in which Ambedkar envisaged reservations. So politicians provide seats in good schools to students from such sections in order to garner more votes. Yes, they want to garner more votes. It's GARNAR. Right? In order to garner more votes. So, do they want that? Yes. And what is it? Benefits of the certain sections of society is different from the manner in which Ambedkar envisaged. So, politicians allocate land. If this is correct, we still go to the next. Politicians allocate land to people from such sections so as to gain popularity with them. Yes, again, this is what is needed. The votes, they need to be popular, so they need to get the votes and the constituencies again. So B is also correct. Politicians provide seats in good schools to students from such sections so as to ensure the students have a bright future. No, they are not concerned, or they are least bothered about the students. Therefore, A and B but not C will be the answer. That makes D correct as the option. Right? Next, 112. Which of the following is the author most likely to agree to? With about students from SCs and STs who are allocated seats. They would agree to the students. So they would benefit more from a vocational rather than mainstream education. No, why only a vocational to be given to them? They can come with the mainstream education also. Right? So author would not agree to this, okay, remove them from the reservation system or remove them from the mainstream education and then give them vocational training only. So no, they would do better academically if they were provided the same kind of support and encouragement as students from more privileged backgrounds. And this is what we had marked in the paragraph, that this is what the schools should do or the government should do. They should be counselled well. Third, if we read, they would do better academically if they were allocated seats in schools that were not so good. Why not so good schools? In the good schools also they should be given admission, no? But the point is that they should be counselled so as they can understand that why academics is important. So C is not there and they would benefit more. That is absolutely out. So you have B as the answer. Here we had marked a responsible socially oriented school or government should oversee that the two benefits of admitting him in the HPS accrue to him. All this we had underlined. Should be planted, they should be able to study by themselves, special classes should be organized. All this would give you to the lead you to the answer. 113 question. So which of the following could be a premise for the author's argument that Ambedkar's objectives for allocating seats in good schools to SCs and STs have not been achieved? It can be a premise for the author's argument. So whatever his conclusion, his argument was that see, the people are doing it to get votes and all. What is the base? So despite being allocated such seats, such students are not able to perform as well academically as others. This is what is the premise. No, this is what the author's objective also was. Such students are able to reap the benefits of such education, and SC and ST society has developed socially and economically as a result. No, they are not able to reap the benefits because the author had suggested that they should be counselled. Then such students are provided a lot of additional support. Absolutely incorrect. And such students are able to do better academically. As absolutely incorrect. So we have reason enough to eliminate D and C on the basis of the additional support and being better academically. No. The argument of the author was that they have been given due to reservation or through reservation they have been given seats, but they are unable to perform their academically well because they are not comfortable in that new environment. So what should the government do? What should the schools do? What should the people do in that? Is that they should be able to pacify them in the manner that encourage them to reap the benefits academically also, because they are there in the good school. So coming to next question, which of the following can be inferred from the author's arguments in the passage above? So the present powers that be are deeply concerned with the well-being of the underprivileged. No, we were not talking about the well-being, no. Democracy is an inefficient system as regards ensuring the upliftment of the underdeveloped, underprivileged. So are we talking about democracy as a whole? We were talking about the registration, the reservations, right? And you can't name this complete system as inefficient, so B will not be there. The present powers that be are more concerned with gaining power than the development of the underprivileged. Yes, this is what can be understood from the passage. So C can be correct, and higher taxes, we know we're talking about the taxes. Right. So this was an easy one. And coming to the last question of this passage also, which of the following, if true, would most weaken the author's arguments in the passage above? We very well know the author's arguments now, that the whatever Ambedkar had suggested or proposed, the people now are not doing according to what he had envisaged. So, despite not getting adequate support, students from SCs and STs who are allocated seats in good schools have managed to ensure the social and economic development of their communities. So, if they are able to do this, but the passage said that, see, if they are given a seat through reservation, but then they are not able to bring those positive changes in the society and in their own communities. Why was this reservation being given? So that the people of different communities, or the underprivileged ones, would get this opportunity, and then ultimately the whole the community and the whole race would be benefited. Right. But then this was not happening according to the passage. What we need is to say in one of the options that, see, this is happening. Why? Because we need to weaken the author's argument. So this sentence properly states that they have managed to ensure the social and economic development. So we can mark this as the answer. Second says, despite being allocated seats in good schools, students from SC/ST are not able to ensure the social. If they are not able to ensure the social, but that was what the point was in the paragraph. So this is not weakening, this is strengthening. Right, so this cannot be the answer then. If this cannot be the answer, then both A and C and none of the above will also not be the answer. Right, so we have A correct. Here, we have marked it. We'll move to the next question. Next passage, sorry. So, given that the poor have little access to credit to finance the venture and limited insurance to cope with risk, shouldn't they try to save as much as they can? Saving would give them a buffer against a bad year in the field or an illness. It could also hold the key to starting a business. Now see, the paragraph states that they should be saving. Who? The poor. Now the point here would be that whether the people have that much money or they do not have the money to save. The reason that they give that they should save, because it will help them someday in the bad year in the field, or if the crop is not good, they'll be saved. If they come across some illness and all, they would have that much money just for a rainy day. So they need to put aside some money for the rainy day. That is the point of the author in the first paragraph. So at this point now, one common reaction is, how could the poor save? They have no money. But this is only superficially sensible. The poor should save because, like everybody else, they have a present and a future. They have little money today, but unless they expect to stumble on a cash during the night, they presumably also expect to have little money tomorrow. So indeed, they should have more reason to save than the rich. If there is at least some possibility that in the future a little bit of buffer could shield them from a disaster. So if they don't have much money, fine, but they have some money today, they will have some money tomorrow also, then they will have some money for the future also. But every day they have some money, out of that some money also they can save So the day that they do not have money, this saved money could be used. So such a financial cushion would, for example, allow the families, poor families in India's Udaipur district to avoid cutting meals when money runs out, which they claim makes them extremely unhappy. Likewise, in Kenya, when a market vendor falls ill with malaria, the family ends up spending a part of the business working capital to pay for medicine, but that makes it hard for the recovering patient to go back to work because he is still recovering. And if he's recovering, he's not going back to work, and if he's not going back to work, he's not going to earn. And this is the very reason why the author says that they should save money. So now they have little or nothing to sell. So couldn't they avoid all that if they had some money set out aside to pay for the drugs? So the Victorians thought that was just how the poor were much too impatient and unable to think far enough ahead. Future की सोचेंगे ही नहीं. So consequently, they believe that the only way to keep the poor from sinking into a life of sloth was to threaten them with extreme misery if they ever strayed from the straight and narrow. So they had the nightmarish poorhouse where the indigent were housed, and the debtors' prison that Charles Dickens wrote about, that view of the poor as essentially indifferent people whose innate inclination towards short-sighted behavior is what keeps them poor. Short-sighted behavior means they will worry only about their very immediate future. That means tomorrow, day after tomorrow. So, is what keeps them poor has persisted over the years in slightly different forms. Now, we see a version of the same view today among the critics of microfinance institutions who accuse the MFIs of preying on the profligacy of the poor. In a very different vein, Gary Becker, the Nobel Prize winner and father of the modern economics of the family, argued in a 1997 paper that the possession of wealth encourages people to invest in becoming more patient. See what he gives. You need to identify the major points. Now he was talking about the rich here. He was talking about the poor in the first 2-3 lines. And by implication, therefore, poverty makes people permanently more impatient. The rich become patient and the poor become lazy, the poor become impatient. They need to earn, they need to spend, they can't save anything for the future. They can't think in that way also. Fine. So, which of the following are the authors of the passage most likely to disagree with? Falling ill with malaria for a market vendor in Kenya can lead to difficulties in their resuming their business. Most likely to disagree. अब केन्या का एग्जाम्पल तो उसने दिया था ना, तो आंसर नहीं होगा. Victorian view of poor people was that they had no capacity to plan for the future and that they would slip into laziness. We had understood the word indolent. The poor have little money and little hope of getting more, so they needn't bother trying to save. Little hope of getting more. अगर ऐसा होता तब तो और bother करते ना. So they needn't bother trying to save. The sentence given about the Victorians is correct. This sentence is correct. This sentence is correct. They have little hope of getting more. ऐसा नहीं है. आज के लिए पैसे हैं, कल के लिए भी पैसे आएंगे because it is a day-to-day matter. So they needn't try to save. But then this sentence is like, because there is little hope of getting more, so they should save, according to the author. So this goes against, and saving money would be beneficial for the poor as it may help protect them against future economic hardships. This is what the author was saying, right? So you have C as the answer because it is against what the author of the passage said. So that is, he would disagree to it. So C becomes your answer. I hope you get it correct. Here, when we read about the Victorians, right, they would be too impatient, and it was like into a life of sloth was to threaten. Next question will come to 117. Which of the following can be validly implied from the author's argument for why the poor should have more reason to save than the rich? The poor should have more reason to save than the rich. Why? Because the poor should spend all the money, should spend. ये तो नहीं आएगा. Let me see. Wait. The poor should spend all their money as soon as they get it. But we need to give a reason of why they have to save it. Right? So if you read the question first and then read the options, you will immediately eliminate it. So this is out. The second sentence says the rich have less reason to save. Why? Because they actually become more patient. Because they can expect to get more money in the future. The poor people have little hope. But the rich have more hope. So they know that they are going to get money. But then they save also. So they have less reason to save. Whereas the poor, they have little hope that they are going to get money tomorrow. They have more reason to save. Right? So that goes along with what the argument was in the question given here. So the rich have less reason to save than the poor because they can expect to get more money in the future. It seems incomplete, but let us mark it and move to the next option. The rich are lazy and indigent and do not bother to plan ahead and save money for the future. But then this is what was given. They are lazy and indigent. That means already they do not have money. They do not bother to plan ahead and save money for the future. Even that is okay. But then this is not a reason of saving. And it is not, in comparison with the rich also. The poor are very good planners and are masters at financial management. Is a contradictory to what is being given there. So we have B as the answer. The rich have less reason to save because they can expect to get more money in the future. What is implied in the passage or what was said in the passage was that the poor have little hope of getting money in the future and therefore they have more reason to save. Next question, 118. The Victorians' establishment of poorhouses and debtors' prisons was premised on the belief that the poor would slip into indolence unless they were threatened with great hardship. Slip into indolence means becoming lazy. The poor did not have the ability to plan ahead and had no patience. So it will be both A and B because these are two sentences that we have read at least twice or thrice. So it makes both A and B as the answer. Here, in the middle of the passage here, the Victorians thought that was just how the poor were much too impatient, unable to think far ahead, and they believed that the only way to keep the poor from sinking into a life of sloth was to threaten them with extreme misery. They have a inclination towards a short-sighted behavior. This is the reason what keeps them poor. 119. Which of the following best describes the similarities between the Victorians and the critics of MFIs in the way of thinking about the poor? We just saw that in the paragraph. So we need something that is similar. So they both thought that poverty was only a problem in the developing world. No. We were talking about the poor. They considered poor people as being impatient. We have read this 3 or 4 times. Unable to think for the future. Cannot go far ahead. 2 baar pad liya aise. They both considered poor people as being unable to do simple mathematical calculations would be out. And they both thought that possessing wealth encourages people to invest in becoming more patient. Possessing wealth encourages people to invest in becoming more patient, but then this was not the thought of the Victorians and the critics of the MFIs, both. So talking about they were to talk about the poor, right? But what is this sentence, D sentence talking about is about the rich. So this will not be the answer. Your answer will be B. That they both considered poor people as being impatient and unable to think ahead of the future. Gone. Question number 120. Which of the following if to would most weaken the author's arguments for why the poor should save whatever they can? You need to weaken the author's argument ki why should they spend or not spend money, all the money, and they should be saving something. So now most saving institutions provide very high rates of interest. Fine, this is correct. So they should be saving. Then governments always step forward to support poor people who fall upon bad times. So we don't need to save, the poor don't need to save money because the government will always be at the beck and call. They'll always help the poor. So they don't need to save. Is that according to the author's arguments? No. So they need to save, that was what was given. The poor cannot predict when they may have to face hardship. Exactly. That is the reason why the author is saying that, see, you don't know what is going to happen in the future. So you should be saving that much money. Right. And this D option was not given by the consortium itself. It was not there in the sample paper. So the best out of these three would be B. Because what we needed was a weakening one. So coming to passage 4. About 2.5 months before the storming of the Bastille in Paris, which was effectively the beginning of the French Revolution. I hope all of you have read this in your 8th class or 9th class. Somewhere there was French Revolution, no? So you are comfortable with this word also. You need not be affected by this new word or words or whatever they are giving you. So no, proper nouns should not make you, should not give you a headache. So the political philosopher and orator Edmund Burke said in Parliament in London. Now what did he say? That an event has happened upon which it is difficult to speak and impossible to be silent. Right. So contradiction, sort of, difficult to speak, impossible to be silent. So this was on May 5, what it is here. Now Burke's speech had nothing much to do with the developing storm in France. The occasion rather was the impeachment of Warren Hastings, who was then commanding the British East India Company, which was setting up British rule in India, beginning with the company's victory in the Battle of Plassey, that was in 1757. Now, in impeaching Warren Hastings, Burke invoked the eternal laws of justice, which Burke claimed Hastings had violated. The impossibility of remaining silent on a subject is an observation that can be made about many cases of patent injustice that move us to a rage in a way that is hard for a language to capture. Now, if you have not understood this sentence, kindly read it again. If you are staying silent, watching an injustice, where you should be angry. Yet any analysis of injustice would also demand clear articulation and reasoned scrutiny. So if you want justice, if you want to speak against injustice, if you want to analyze injustice, what is required is a clear articulation and reasoned scrutiny. Burke did not in fact give much evidence of being lost for words. He spoke eloquently. That means he was not at a loss for words. He spoke well, not on one misdeed of Hastings, but on a great many, and proceeded from there to present simultaneously a number of separate and quite distinct reasons for the need to indict Warren Hastings. That means he gave his own reasons also. So impeachment, indictment, blaming, and then he talked about the nature of the emerging British rule in India. No argument was separated out by Burke as a reason for impeaching Warren Hastings. Instead, Burke presented a collection of distinct reasons for impeaching him. So what we can understand now, that Burke wanted or blamed Warren Hastings about the way he was ruling, you can say, the emerging British rule in India, and what he was doing. here in the second paragraph it is said. So Burke did not give only one reason or very distinct evidences there, but then he talked about the whole issue. He presented a collection of distinct reasons for impeaching him. The underlying issue here is whether we have to agree on one specific line of censure for a reasoned consensus on the diagnosis of an injustice that calls for urgent rectification. So the point here is that whether we should be discussing whether all of us agree to the same thing, a reasoned means logical consensus, or should we speak because the situation begs that. That means it calls for urgent rectification. What should we do? Should we wait for everybody's opinion, or should we change it, rectify it, correct it because it was injustice? So what is important to note here is, central to the idea of justice, is that we can have a strong sense of injustice on many different grounds and yet not agree on one particular ground as being the dominant reason for the diagnosis of injustice. Now see, this paragraph is talking about the diagnosis of injustice. So when these incidents of injustice are diagnosed, there would be a reason that, see, this is injustice, the reason being so and so and so. Now if we wait for the rectification of this, we would wait to actually get everybody else's opinions and coming to a consensus and then correcting it. Or can we correct it if we know that yes, this is injustice done? So do we need to specify it? Do we need to prove it? Do we need to come up with a combined opinion, a consensus that is called, right? Because there is an injustice, everybody would agree, but possible that all of them are not agreeing to the reason of that injustice, right? Or how that is manifested. So different grounds and yet not agree on one particular ground. That was the point here, as being the dominant reason for the diagnosis of injustice. So which of the following can be inferred from the passage now? Question number 121. Burke did not think that the French Revolution was worthy of comment. Do we need to talk anything about the French Revolution? Not required, no? Burke thought the storming of the Bastille was an inconsequential event. But what he was doing was, before the storming of the Bastille, whatever he did, he impeached Warren Hastings. And here, talking about it as inconsequential will also not be correct, because the storming of the Bastille came up with consequences. Inconsequential is something that is not giving us any result. So B will not be the answer. Burke thought Hastings' actions meant Hastings should be impeached, right? And therefore he came up with so many incidents, his evidence that he gathered, and then displayed them also, or stated, advanced them. Let's see, all these are the cases where injustice has been done, and therefore he impeached Hastings. So we can keep C as the answer. And here no words to describe Hastings and his misdeeds, that is out. We read it in the last part of the passage. 122. Each of the following is an example of an case of patent injustice to which, according to the author, impossibility of remaining silent on a subject is an observation that can be made, except a man got so angry with his neighbor for playing loud music in the middle of the night that he starts berating the neighbor from his window. Berating the neighbor would mean speaking out angrily, degrading him. So he is speaking out, right? A person being so upset at being slapped unfairly by another that they have no words to say to another person, but now he is not saying anything. A child being so badly bullied by others but they cannot even say something. to the bully. An old person left mouth agape on the road when a thief snatches their purse. Agape means with your mouth open. So if you keep your mouth open, that means surprised, wondered, spellbound. You are not doing anything, not saying anything. So not saying anything is in B, C and D, and therefore A, where that person goes and shouts to his neighbor, becomes the answer. Here, A becomes your answer, B, C and D are out. (123) What is the author's main point in the passage above? So we may sometimes feel that something is unjust, but others may not agree with us. Possible. We may sometimes feel that something is unjust for many other different reasons, but cannot agree upon the main reason why it is unjust. This also can be possible. And Burke was an eloquent speaker, is out. And he did not like Warren Hastings, is absolutely out then. So we have B as the answer. Next question, 124. Why, according to the author, would not begin to being able to respond with words to patent injustice not help in the analysis of injustice? Not being able to respond with words. Now, because if Burke had not spoken out against Warren Hastings, he would have continued with his injustice. Because such analysis requires that we take immediate action in responses to such cases of patent injustice. Because such analysis requires that we present our thoughts and reasons clearly. Now see, what is the question? Here in both these cases, it requires that we take immediate action in response to such cases. Here the analysis requires that we present our thoughts and reasons clearly. Either take immediate actions, or should our thoughts be clear? Right, because B and C both sound correct. First option says, because if Burke had not spoken out against Warren Hastings, he would have continued with his injustices. Read the question again. Why, according to the author, would not being able to respond with words to patent injustice not help in the analysis of injustice? Something that is not going to help you. वो देना है. And because then such instances would not count as cases of patent injustice, that will not be though. So we have C as the answer here. Let me see. Yeah. So we present our thoughts and reasons clearly. So if he had not spoken, it is not necessary to give reasons. See, he had always said, in the passage it was said that if you find this as injustice, you speak about it. Right? It is not necessary that your reason that you advance in stating that action as an action of injustice, it may not be similar to the other person giving the reason. So what you have to do is you only have to take an action there. So we present our thoughts and reasons clearly. Question number 125. Which of the following is the author most likely to agree with? Most likely to agree. So we need not agree that something is unjust for it to be classified as unjust and requiring an immediate solution. Possible? We need to immediate solution नहीं चाहिए ना. Second, justice is such a complicated issue that we can never agree that something is unjust and requires an immediate solution. We can never agree. Never becomes a very strong word here. Unless we can agree on one main cause for why something is unjust. We did not mention this, no. We did not read this, that see, everybody should come to this one reason of why that act of injustice is an act of injustice. उसका रीजनिंग सभी को मतलब मान लेना चाहिए कि हाँ यही एक रीज़न है. But when we read in the paragraph, in the passage, it was that see, it is not necessary that it would be a reason, the same reason would be applied there for everyone. So it could be differing also. So we can agree on one main cause, ये ज़रूरी नहीं है. So there is no need for us to agree upon one main cause, for by something is unjust, to agree that it is unjust and requires an immediate solution. So if something is unjust, it is unjust. So we have D as the answer. Now coming to passage 5. We in India worry a lot about the possible missteps that can happen in the implementation of large-scale transfers. The money or the food may end up in the wrong hands. Some intermediary may get rich at the expense of the taxpayers. All these are what we think about or what we worry about. Some intermediary may get rich at the expense of the taxpayer. But in times like these, amidst the pandemic, with the nation in lockdown and with lives and livelihoods at stake, it is the wrong set of concerns. That means we need not worry about the things or the transfers, large-scale transfers, whether it is the money or the food, going to people who require and also going to the people who are less deserving. But even if the food or the money goes to the person who is less deserving, it's fine. But the person who is deserving should not be left out. That is the point. So as it becomes clear that the lockdown will go on for quite a while in a total of a more localized version, the biggest worry right now by far is that a huge number of people will be pushed into dire poverty or even starvation by the combination of the loss of their livelihoods and interruptions in the standard delivery mechanisms. So that is a tragedy in itself, and moreover opens up the risk that we see large-scale defiance of lockdown orders. Starving people, after all, have little to lose. We need to do what it takes to reassure people that society does care and that minimum well-being will be. They will be secure. The minimum well-being will be given to them. So why? Because the people, they would defy. Why would they defy? That even if there's a lockdown, they are going to cross the borders and move from one state to another, because they don't have anything to lose and they don't have anything to gain. They are not getting anything there. So we have the resources to do this. The stocks of food at the Food Corporation of India are more than 3 times the buffer stock norms. This is likely to grow over the next weeks as the Rabi crop comes in. So indeed, the government already has shown a willingness to use the stocks. It has offered a supplementary PDS, that is public distribution system, or ration provision of 5 kg per person per month for the coming 3 months. However, it is quite likely the 3 months will not be enough, since even if the lockdown ends soon, the process of reopening the economy will take time. More importantly, a substantial fraction of the poor are excluded from the PDS rolls for one reason or another, such as identification barriers to get a ration card that turn out to be hard to overcome, and this supplementary provision only applies to those who are already on it. So there's also evidence that there are a lot of bona fide applications. For example, old age pensioners help up in the verification process, partly because the responsible local authorities try to avoid letting anybody in by mistake to avoid any appearance of malfeasance. Now see, not in the middle of a crisis, correct response is to issue temporary ration cards. Now see, what are these numbers saying? They exceed the social cost of letting in some who could perhaps do without it. Now this was what I was saying, that there are people who would be less deserving, but let the money or the ration go to those people. At least the deserving people should not be left out. That is the idea of the whole passage. So we quickly went through it, getting the idea there. So question number 126. Which of the following best represents the author's views on the government's decision to offer supplementary PDS provisions to people mentioned in the passage above? So, author's views represented by, they oppose it and do not think it is enough. As 3 months of supplementary provisions may not be enough and many needy people are not enrolled on the PDS list. Do they oppose it? No. Do they support it? Yes. Do they oppose it? No. Do they support it? Yes. So at least out of these 4 options we eliminate 2. Now, if they are supporting it, then how? They support it but do not think it is enough, as 3 months of supplementary provisions may not be enough and many needy people are not enrolled on the PDS lists. Why? Because more than 3 months also this can go on. The author's views, right? The author's views is that they support it but they do not think it is enough, as 3 months of supplementary provisions may not be enough and many needy people are not enrolled on the PDS list. So we have B as the answer. We move out A, we move out C, and D is an incomplete one. It says that it is more than enough. More than enough means sabhi ka kaam ho jayega. Question 127. Which of the following, if true, would most weaken the author's position on either the supplementary PDS provision offered by the government would be sufficient in the circumstances described in the passage? We need something that is weakening. So the FCI does not have a wide variety of food grains in stock. Did it have? India's economy, it had a wide variety of foods with the Rabi crop coming in, it was said, if you remember that line. India's economy will eventually rebound to the levels it was at prior to the pandemic. The lockdown is likely to go on for more than 3 months. Even this was mentioned by the author, that it is possible. And then every needy person in India has been added to the PDS rolls. But then this was not done. So D becomes the answer, because what we need is weakening the author's position. Question number 128. Based on the author's views on the actions of local authorities responsible for the verification process for adding people to the PDS roles in the passage above, which of the following are the authors least likely to agree with? It is critical that public officials ensure there is no appearance of wrongdoing, even at the cost of some deserving persons not receiving benefits from the state. Deserving persons not receiving benefits, ये नहीं होना चाहिए. Deserving persons से benefits मिलना चाहिए. Right? We'll keep this aside. Public officials should be focused on ensuring the well-being of people even at the cost of a loss to the state. ठीक है, ये तो है, स्टेट को नुकसान हो भले, लेकिन लोगों को नहीं होना चाहिए. तो दिस इज करेक्ट. दिस इज अ strengthening one. The most important duty of public officials is to ensure that state-sponsored benefits reach the needy people. Yes. And in a crisis such as a pandemic or the lockdown, public officials should take a more compassionate views for the needs of the poor people. Yes. Now, even if you do not understand the question, if you do not understand the option, You have eliminated 3 because B, C, and D are similar to what the author says. And what we need is something that the author is least likely to agree to. That will be A, because the deserving persons not receiving benefits from the state should not be the situation. So that is 128A. Coming to 129. So which of the following would, if it were not true, understand this sentence. हमेशा हमारे पास क्वेश्चन में आता है if true. अब हमें देखना है कि अगर ये ट्रू नहीं होता है तो they have the effect of weakening the author's proposals relating to previous provisions in the passage above. If it were not true, it should be weakening. That means what? Given options, इसका opposite would weaken the author's proposals. So, the FCI was established many years ago. The FCI was established to support the farmers and provide them with a minimum support price for their harvest. The FCI has very meager stocks, and the FCI has much more stock than it is required to maintain as a buffer stock. Now, if it has meager stocks, इसका opposite हो जाएगा, it has buffer stock. तो buffer stock तो author के proposal को weaken नहीं कर रहा है. D sentence says the FCI has much more stock than it is required to maintain as a buffer stock. इसका opposite हो जाएगा, it doesn't have much stock. And if it doesn't have much stock, then the author's proposal will be weakened. And therefore, D becomes the answer. So understand the question well first. You need to weaken, and then you need to negate it, and then it should be weakening. Which of the following would be the most accurate summary of the main ideas set out in the passage above? Accurate summary. So the FCI has bumper stocks. The government needs money to kickstart the economy after the lockdown. The government should therefore sell the FC's stocks at an inflated price to earn the money required. Inflated price. Let us see. The FCI has bumper stocks. Farmers need support at a time like the lockdown. Therefore, the government should destroy the FC stocks and buy more grain. From farmers at high prices to support them. To buy more and support them. But then you are destroying. So, not necessary. FCI is bumper stocks. Many people in India face the prospect of poverty, hunger because of the pandemic and the lockdown. Therefore, the government should distribute the FCI stocks among the needy without worrying too much about less deserving people getting the benefits. Fine. This was what we were discussing throughout. That even if some less deserving people get the stocks, no problem. The deserving people should not be left out. Coming to the last passage. So, David Frack's presentation to the Florida Coastal School of Law's faculty did not seem to pose a challenge. Law professor for several years, Frack was a finalist for the school's deanship, and the highlight of his 2-day visit was his hour-long talk, in which he discussed his ideas of fixing what he saw as the major problems facing the school. Now, midway through Frack's presentation, he was interrupted when Dennis Stone, the school's president, entered the room. Stone told Frack to stop insulting the faculty and told him that if he didn't leave the premises immediately, security would be called. He packed up his belongings and left. What had happened? Florida Coastal is a for-profit law school, and in his presentation to its faculty, Frack had catalogued disturbing trends in the world for for-profit legal education. This world is one in which law schools accredited by the American Bar Association admit large numbers of severely underqualified students. These students in turn take out hundreds of millions of dollars in loans annually, much of which they will never be able to repay. They are not able to repay. They will not be able to repay. They take the loans because what is going on in the for-profit law school is that this school is actually taking in those people or those students who are below average, underqualified students. These students in turn take hundreds and thousands of millions of dollars in loans annually, much of which they are not going to, or they will never be able to repay. So eventually what is going to happen? Federal taxpayers will be stuck with the tab even as the schools themselves continue to reap enormous profits. Now if these schools are giving admission to the students who are underqualified, they are going to take those loans and they will not be able to pay the loan back. So who is going to suffer now? The banks, right? Schools are going to benefit because they are continuing to reap enormous profits. So Florida Coastal is owned by Infilaw System, a corporate entity created by a Chicago-based private equity firm. Infilaw bought Florida Coastal around the same time that a set of changes in federal loan programs for financing graduate and professional education made for profit law schools. Tempting opportunities, in 2006 the federal direct plus loan program was changed, allowing any graduate student admitted to an accredited program to borrow the full cost of attendance directly from the federal government. Now if you need the attendance to be full, you need to buy that also, right? Now the program limits neither the that a school can charge for attendance nor the amount that can be borrowed in federal loans. So since private equity firm seeks to maximize profits and returns on investments, this is for a private equity firm a remarkably attractive arrangement. The investors get their money upfront in the form of the tuition paid for by student loans. Meanwhile, any subsequent default on those loans is somebody else's problems. In this case, the federal governments, so they are the people who are giving the loans to those underqualified students. So who is going to bear the brunt of it if they are unable to return the loan, repay the loan? It is the federal government only. So this situation from the perspective of investors is higher education calls remarkably close to the capitalist dream of privatizing profits while socializing losses. So from the perspective of graduates who can't pay back their loans, however, this dream is very much a nightmare. Educational debt can almost never be discharged in bankruptcy and will continue to follow borrowers throughout their adult lives. And anecdotal evidence suggests that many law degrees that do not lead to legal careers have a negative value because most employers outside the legal profession don't like to hire failed lawyers. Now, the major point of this passage would be that people or this particular school, that is for-profit law school, this is taking in or giving admissions to those students who are underqualified, and definitely they will not come up as very bright and outstanding students. So ultimately they are not going to get very bright jobs also. Their future is not so bright. So they will, and to get admission in these colleges, in this school, they actually take loans which the federal government provides them. And because they are unable to get the jobs, why? Because the people would not hire these failed lawyers, so they will not get the jobs. If they don't get the jobs, then they will not be able to pay the loans on time. So who is going to suffer? It is the federal government who is going to suffer. If this much is understood from the passage, it's good, fine. We'll come to the options, questions now. So based on the information in the passage above, had David Frank done which of the following? Would he have been unlikely to be asked to leave the premises? Now, had he done this, अगर उसने इनमें से कोई काम किया होगा तो he would be not asked to leave the premises. उसे कोई नहीं बोलता जाने के लिए, तो उसने क्या किया क्या नहीं किया. Avoid criticizing the emerging developments in the world of for-profit legal education. उसे ये करना चाहिए था ना. उसे अवॉइड करना चाहिए था क्रिटिसाइज करना. क्यों? क्योंकि लीगल एजुकेशन का ये जो स्कूल था वो फॉर प्रॉफिट था. सो इफ ही हैड नॉट सेड एनीथिंग अबाउट दिस फॉर प्रॉफिट लीगल एजुकेशन, he would not have been he would not have been asked to leave, right? Now point out the greedy tactics of private. No, he did not have to point them out, so he had to avoid doing it. तभी तो उसे जाने के लिए नहीं बोलते, right? If he had worn a more professional outfit, more suited, ये तो illogical. Talk about how for profit was immoral. He had to talk about this? No, he had to avoid talking about this. So talking about would be incorrect. 131 A is your answer. 132, based on the information in the passage above, which of the following are the federal direct plus loan program, if true, would be most likely to have made for-profit law schools less attractive opportunities for private equity firms? Read the question again if it is a lengthy one. Break it up. See, based on the information in the passage above, which of the following about the federal direct plus loan program, if true, would be most likely to have made for-profit law schools less attractive? That means this loan program जो भी था, ठीक है, इसके बारे में कोई ऐसा सेंटेंस होता जो लॉ स्कूल्स को लेस अट्रैक्टिव बनाता है. दैट मीन्स द स्टूडेंट्स वुड नॉट गो टू दैट स्कूल, वुड नॉट take so heavy loans and go to that school, right? So upper limits or caps on the fees that law schools can charge for attendance, this can be the case. Because when the students went there, they had to give that much money also so that they would get that attendance, right? Now to get that money, to give that money, they had to take loans, and when they had to take so huge loans, they would be unable to repay those loans, and because they are unable to repay the loans, it is the federal government who is going to suffer, right? So what can be done now? If there was an upper limit, so this is the only thing that you can take. Now, you can't get any other fees higher than this. You can't charge any fees higher than this. If this happens, then the loans that are taken would not be huge, right? This is possible. A minimum amount that could be borrowed by students, a minimum तो इतना तो लेना ही है, पर बात तो maximum की थी. तो maximum में अगर cap लगता है, so then the federal government will not be at a loss, at a huge loss, you can say. So 132, we have A as the answer, better than the others. 133, which of the following, if implemented as a reform to the federal direct plus loan program, would be likely to help avoid the problem of law students taking on massive loans? It would help avoid the problem of law students taking loans that they find difficult to pay back. So, loans under the program would only be provided to students who were likely to obtain high-paying jobs on graduation. That means only those students are going to get the job, going to get the loans, who have the caliber in them, who would be getting good jobs, possibly. So, this is okay, fine. A maximum amount would be specified beyond which loans would not be provided. So, you need to give a cap there, right? That is the cap. The upper limit is to be specified, that beyond this you are not going to get the loans, right? So, even this can be done. So, then the problems will be solved, and therefore, both A and B we have is the answer. Correct? 134, which among the following, if true, would most weaken the author's explanation for why the situation described in the passage comes remarkably close to the capitalist dream of privatizing profits while socializing tosses for private equity firms. So, if a law student from a for-profit law school is unable to pay back the loans. The corporation that owns the law school need not pay back the loan. We are doing the last question. The second last question we are doing. So, money earned from the education sector, such as through the fees charged by for-profit law schools, is exempt from tax. If students are unable to pay back the loans, the federal government can take strict measures to collect their dues, such as possessing students' homes and belongings. Belongings and all this will not do. And if the federal government is faced with a situation where many students at for-profit law schools are unable to pay back their loans, they can order the private equity firms that own those schools pay back the loans. That means if the students are unable to pay back the loan, it will be the schools who have to pay back the loans. Right. So this is going to weaken the author's explanation for why the situation described in the passage comes remarkably close to the capitalist dream of privatizing the profits while socializing tosses for private equity firms. So we have D sentence as the answer. Which of the following would, if it were true, help alleviate the problems faced by law graduates who cannot pay back the loans? If it were true, see, this is to be focused, no? Alleviate, we have done this word, alleviate would mean to reduce, to lessen, to remove or mitigate the problems faced by law graduates who cannot pay back their loans. So now they are talking about the law graduates. Now see, if when we talk about that passage, there were three stakeholders there. It was the for-profit schools, it was the students who were there, and it was the federal government who was at stake there. So if these are the stakeholders in the whole matter, then who is going, the questions are based on all of these. So now it is a problem faced by the law graduates because they are unable to pay back their loans. So what will be best to remove this problem? The best thing to remove this problem would be the B option, that employers across the sectors are very keen to hire the people who have had a legal education. Right? If they are able to hire the people, but it was given in the last paragraph that those sectors are not very keen on hiring the failed graduates, you can say. Right. So if this happens, then that's good. This is going to remove or mitigate their problems. So interest rates on loans provided is nothing to do with it right now. If they are very high. Employers do not like hiring people who have huge loans to pay back. They'll hire the people on the caliber, as I said. So D is out, C is out. Right? Blacklist of the loan defaulters amongst employers, even that is not required. If you circulate a blacklist, what is going to happen? Right? It is not going to alleviate the problems of the law graduates. Hence, D would be the answer. So, if that is done, as I said again, two passages were a little on the difficult thing, and the rest of the four passages were quite easy. You could have done them very well. So, that's all for today, and all the best for your upcoming tests. Thank you everyone, and have a logical day ahead. Thank you. मैं हटूं? सिस्टम हैंग हो गया, बहुत चल गया आज. अरे वो ना छोटी छोटी सी गलतियाँ उसमें थी टाइपिंग में बस, क्योंकि वो वर्ड से उधर पीडीएफ से वर्ड हुआ था ना, तो उसमें गलतियाँ आई हैं, पर मैंने तो अभी कंटिन्यू कर दिया उसको. इनको दे दिया क्या? आंसर्स मार्क्ड वाला दे दिया क्या सोनल मैम को?
वो आपके पास
देना है ना? हाँ